I'm just thinking I could do a demonstration of... is anybody interested in a demonstration of television transmission? Yes? I need to... I've only got to hook this thing up to there then.
Which one is it, Brian? Or just you control it here?
That's focused. This one is the one.
Which one? That one there.
I presume somebody knows how to work that. While you're waiting, I'll explain to you what I'm doing. This is a video television transmitter, video and audio, in about 1.2 to 1.5 gigahertz, synthesized. And what I've done is I've put it inside this thing here with a battery, and that's all that's in there. It's just in there for convenience. And then I found this in a junk shop for 10 quid, and it's quite a reasonable colour camera. So I'm just using that as the simple means to demonstrate and illustrate. It's not how it would be used. You could hardly expect anybody to go around with one of these, although, just for a laugh, nice little fine thing, isn't it? I've got a picture of a man going rambling on about 20 times that size. He must be from MI7 and 5/8. Does anybody know how to operate this thing? If they can put it onto external for me. Yeah. Okay, so we know. Not the greatest for 10 quid, but what do you expect? Okay.
On that demonstration, Mr. Tracey's introduced himself, but it forced me to welcome you all here to the lecture. It's nice to see such a large turnout. I think it's the largest we've had for, since I can remember anyway. I'm not that old. It's the younger members section. It's nice to see some people who are perhaps not younger members, but some younger members as well. It's a nice mix. I'm sure it's due to the interest in the lecture and also perhaps the publicity that was sent around beforehand. So it just forced me to introduce Mr. Tracey and talk to you on electronic spying.
Right, thank you. I am short. The thing I wanted to show you. Having got here a little bit late, I've not had the chance to sort of sort myself out to the degree I would like to have done. But we're in the biggest recession I think we've ever had. And it's going to go on, I think, for the rest of this year. But there is one shining little globe of success in the middle of this recession, and it's called the bugging business. And there is a company, and it's that I wanted to show you, if I just have a quick, see if I can find it, that you may have seen the advertisements for this company. They're called Lorraine Electronics, and they advertise I'm being defeated here. Right, give up. Anyway, Lorraine. Here we go, brute force. Yes, here they are.
That was working 10 minutes ago.
Have I put it on? Ah, it's clever. That was the chap I wanted to show you before. You can just imagine every spy walking around with one of those. Alright, we've got it. Try again.
But I'll let you read it.
That's what I'm doing. There we go. Right, Lorraine Electronics. This company spends £30,000 a month on advertising. Now, it doesn't need many of you, I think, to work out what kind of turnover you're going to need in order to be able to pay for that. And that's just one company. In Exchange and Mart, you'll find hundreds of other advertisements for these things. So where do they go? Who uses them? Who buys them? Because a total industry has built up on this, and another industry has built up called the debugging industry. And they feed on each other. And in fact, there are one or two debuggers who get so disappointed at never finding anything, they actually plant one so that they can find it. Because they think that if they don't find one soon, they won't get any repeat orders. So if they can never find a bug, and I'm 66 years old and I've been in this business since 1943, and I've only found 3 bugs in my entire life. So where are they? Where have they gone? If we take a look at a Dutch company that it's called PSS. I think I'll get this right. Oh, there we go. All right, I've sussed it now. This is a company in Holland. Their catalogue is about that thick, and every page is a full colour photograph page. That catalogue must have cost £80,000 to £90,000 because not only do they make the catalogue, they mail it out around the world in hundreds. So let's look at a few of their things. You can see the gentleman. Have I got, yes, I did. Got it right. This is the gentleman who owns the business. A very arrogant gentleman, by the way. Keeps his door locked and wants to know who you are before he'll let you in and even sell you the stuff. And then he has various products. Now, here you've got a video TV camera detector. Those of you electronics engineers, you know, that you'd really have to shove that up the backside of a camera to detect anything with it. So it's absolute rubbish that you can do it. And here you've got a video transmitter. This is actually a very interesting video transmitter. Those of you, most of you are all youngsters, but those of you who are actually old enough to have children, your kids have probably got a computer. And they connect the computer into the antenna socket of your TV through a thing called an RF modulator. So, and you know exactly what that is. It actually costs about £5, I think, in the shops. And all it is simply taking 1 volt peak to peak and modulating it up so that you can get RF and go in. Inside this £1,000 device is a £5 RF demodulator with an extra transistor to give it a bit of boost. So a very, marvellous device. Here you've got Sony's receiver. So we're not really looking at any sophistication yet. And here we've got an Hitachi case with activated long play recorder, and that's modern. I mean, that's almost digital. And you're really looking at 1930s type ideas of technology, and yet they're doing £1 million type business with it. Here you've got a Japanese transmitter made by a company in Japan called Koni, and here is the famous sugar cube transmitter. Down there, perhaps I might put that up to the top, you can see that a little bit better. You may have heard of this, the sugar cube transmitter. And it's about the size of a sugar cube, and you'd put a hearing aid type battery slides in between. Now when these things first came, this one is a modern version because of surface mount technology, they can make it a little better. But when they first brought this out, they made it with a tunnel diode. And when it was first brought to me to test, I had a pretty sophisticated receiver, but which was hand-tuned. And as it warmed up, I was going like a lunatic across the dial, trying to keep up with the frequencies. So, this thing also, you may have heard about the cocktail transmitter, the cocktail cherry transmitter. Well, if you think about it for a minute, the cocktail cherry goes in the drink. Right? So it's underwater. And those RF engineers amongst you, if you discovered how to do good transmission of RF underwater, while the water's running into your microphone and running into your circuit and everything else, and then if you can also get it to transmit after somebody's chewed it and it's gone down their stomach, you've really achieved something. So you're talking all the time about what I call Toy Town and Mickey Mouse. And here we've got the concrete microphone. Now this one hears through concrete walls. It's actually not quite as stupid as it sounds, because in the old days, I started life in 1943 as a codes and cipher sergeant in RAF intelligence. And I soon found that playing with toys was more interesting, so I gradually moved away from that and started to build things that could be more fascinating to play with than all these horrible numbers and number crunching, which was a bore. What we had to encode and decode was fascinating. I was only a sergeant, but I would get a message from Churchill for Eisenhower. I knew what it was because I decoded it, but the brigadier, he wasn't allowed to know. So the sergeants in codes and cipher ran the war. But I went off into other things and played around, and I found later on, playing with this sort of thing, that if you took a microphone and put it into a solid mass, a very heavy mass, and then put a cavity there, and then put it up against a wall, it was amazing what you could actually hear the other side. They do work, in effect. So it's a toy, but it's not quite as daft as you think. Tracking beeper transmitter. This is now quite good technology today. They can make a transmitter which is about the size, about a third of the size of a lady's lipstick, and they've had success at 20 miles with this, but just transmitting pulses. And that success has been brought about mainly by the sensitivity of the receivers and using twin receivers together. So there's a lot of achievement there, and they can now build transmitters into very tiny tracking units for vehicles, for goods. In fact, I'll skip about it fairly quickly. The powers that be actually like to catch rifles and guns from the IRA and put transmitters in them and then give them back. So that has become a sophisticated business. This is again the Japanese stuff. Now again, this is very, very simple, straightforward FM. Usually either VHF or UHF. Quite well made today, but there's nothing new about the technology. There's nothing great about it. And these things are made in Japan and come over to here for about 10 or 12 pounds, and they're sold for around about 360, 380 pounds. So you're all in the wrong business. Now, do we have any better technology than this? Well, this little thing down here, which I think some of you have seen, it's a VHF. It's a VHF transmitter, 175, crystal controlled, about 70 milliwatt output, and it's got a built-in microphone, external microphones, connect to telephones and everything else. It performs quite well, is quite well made, and is really in the commercial world, not into the military or the spy world so much. Although, if you recall the recent state where they tried to catch the man that kidnapped the girl, if you remember, his body mic failed. Do you remember that? Did any of you read that, where they failed to get information back so as they could find, because his actual microphone on his body failed? It was this one that failed. So even this is not that perfect. I'm not saying this injured one, but this type of thing that failed. If you want to go into the real world, into the MI7 and 5/8, by the way, you know what MI5 stands for, than MI6? MI5 is charged with defending the secrets of the realm, and MI6 is charged with stealing everybody else's. But if, for those of you who are technically orientated, let me suggest to you a very simple advance, and that is double sideband suppressed carrier. There is no bug detector currently available in the world that can actually stay locked to that long enough to be able to tell that it's a bug. Because the carrier comes up so infrequently, and all these bug detectors are really scanning, not genuine scanning receivers, they are in fact what you might call trick shot receivers. And so to understand what they're doing, you really need to have a great amount of technical knowledge. You need to have the skill to be able to look at a spectrum analyzer display and really understand what it is you see when it comes up. If you've got that kind of know-how, then you've got the chance, perhaps, to detect that this is, shall we say, double sideband suppressed carrier. Going back 20 years, 25 years ago, I used to build a transmitter with a simple subcarrier. In other words, I just moved about 35 kilohertz and put the audio onto that. And for years that fooled the best brains there were, simply because they would tune through, they'd come to the carrier, they get the squelch, but there's nothing on it. Nothing to listen to, nothing of interest, so they just moved on. And it was just a simple subcarrier. So unless somebody is so trained and so attuned to this fact that you've got to be suspicious of everything, then they're not going to find even a simple device like that. To go up a notch, if we were to take a prime carrier like BBC 4, one of them transmits all night, I think, and is a very powerful signal. And we're talking about something in a deviation of about 75 kilohertz for ordinary broadcast. Supposing we now take a bug, we make one which is only 3 or 4 kilohertz deviation, and we put it dead centre of the public broadcast transmission. Now your home is the target. So we come to your home and we take a field strength reading of the BBC transmission at the point of your home. Then we make the bug 100 dBs down from that signal and put it in the noise. We now digitally process the noise to take it out again. And don't forget, we know it's there because we put it there. You don't know it even exists. So why do you go looking for it? And if you do go looking for it, with what piece of equipment would you look? Spectrum analyzer? You'd never see it. You'd never see it. With any scanning receiver, you'd never hear it. You would only hear its host, the carrier. So that is a simple system that is not simple technically, but that is where the government level is at the moment. So you see, there is a big world of difference. We're not quite as behind as people think. In fact, Britain, I would say, leads the world in bugging. Definitely, because that's mainly caused, of course, by the Irish problem. That we've had a longer need, a greater drive, and consequently the problems have been so great that more and more money has been pumped into the intelligence services to solve these kind of problems. They themselves in their own TSUs, a TSU is a technical support unit, which most of your police forces will have a technical support unit, and the 5s and 6s and the others have all got them as well. And these are people who are really intended not to invent and design super things, because they're not really paid the kind of salary that attracts the kind of person who can do that. They're meant to be there to fill the gaps, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. The money goes to people, the late lamented Plessy at Havant, where, or at Rogue Manor. Now, you get certain sections in Plessy, certain sections in Macaroni and various other companies who would produce this, and we're talking not hundreds of thousands of pounds, we're talking millions here. So you've got really superb equipment coming out. For instance, there's a thing called a non-linear junction detector. And many of you will instantly think what that is. It's a rusty nail detector. Now, every circuit virtually has got a non-linear junction in it. Every circuit, nearly all have a diode in it, or if they haven't got a diode, they've got a non-linear junction. I mean, even, as I say, a rusty nail is a non-linear junction, so you can imagine how many there are. But they have got the sophistication of this type of detection down to such a degree that they can tell you precisely from the answer what it is they've discovered, whether they've discovered a bug, whether they've discovered a microphone. For instance, if you're looking for a FET microphone, and we had one, well, we did have one. There it is, yes we do, we still have one. There's a little FET microphone, that little black piece at the end. Now, with the proper preamp behind that, that could pick up a whisper at 30 feet without any trouble at all. And again, you come back to using Plessey. With this is a Plessey Vogad device in there. Now, the Plessey Vogad device, of course, was designed for people speaking into microphones here, but you've only got to put a stage up front, and you've got it exactly what you want for this. Well, now I have put these microphones in a room, take an ordinary cable, just this cable, as you can see, it's not even proper microphone cable, over 300 yards, 300 yards, through a building, up in ducts with power wiring and every other kind of wiring, and at the end there, crystal clear audio. So these little devices you would never find physically. Your chances of taking a place to pieces to find one of those is just impossible. But a non-linear junction detector can detect them. So that bit of sophistication has gone up. And it doesn't have to be active, of course, it can be completely passive. Bugs can be switched off, radio control switched off, they can be time operated, but they can be now detected. The basic idea that something has to be that small, however, is not really viable. Many, many, many years ago, the guerrillas that used to go out in the field would come to me and say, why are all our transmitters the size of household bricks when the Americans have got them in a peanut, the Russians have got them in an olive? Why are they in this size? And my answer was, size doesn't really matter. Disguise matters. And I issued a challenge that I would hide a bug the size of a briefcase in a room and they'd never find it. And as long as they didn't use electronic means, I was talking about physical means. And what I did was I designed the bug to look like a C-cell battery. Then I got low-bore C-cell batteries, and using tacking system with I just tacked them on like a row of sausages, series parallel. And then I had a doorway in this building which was a hollow doorway, and I drilled a big hole in the top of the door, and then I stuffed all the batteries down inside the door, poured in sawdust, sealed it all up, and there it was, a tiny little microphone. It was transmitting. They searched that room everywhere and they never found it. So size isn't that critical. It's critical if you're trying to nip something in quickly and put it in underneath a table or something like that. But if you're a professional, if you've got time, and if you go back to the old time, modern times make life a little harder, but in the old days, chairs were often good old wooden chairs. And they had good old wooden legs. You should turn the legs up and drill a great hole all the way down the centre of one leg, and then feed the bug and the batteries all in there, put a cork in, close it up and put the chair back. Well, that's impossible with that. In his book, Peter Wright, one or two of you may have read the thing, talked about how he bugged the Russian embassy and never entered the building. And it's perfectly true, he did. But you couldn't do it today. What he did was to put an RF signal on the line outside and fire it up into the building to the handset. Now your handset is normally broken by the hook switch. So the microphone is dead, but the bell wire is dead. But in the old days, the microphone was a granules, carbon granules. And you could excite these with RF. And of course RF would just jump the hook switch, there was no problem at all. And the speech would modulate the granules and you could listen. But today, modern techniques, that doesn't work. So, simple things in the old days, and now by merely the changing times are becoming more and more and more difficult. So you've got to find different ways to bug. And if you think about it for a minute, in the old days, well, I keep talking about the old days, I've been talking about 3 or 4 years ago, it was all audio. And if you understand what is intelligence, what is the Secret Service, all it is an information retrieval system. That's all it is. All they want to know is who did what to whom, where and when, or what happens where. All they need is knowledge. If MI5 can find out who is going to plant the bomb, and where they're going to plant the bomb, and when they're going to plant the bomb, then they have total knowledge, they have total control and can totally deal with it. If MI6 know exactly what's on the document, who's mentioned on the document, and where it is, they've got total knowledge. So all it is knowledge. And you can only receive knowledge, if we cut out Braille as a special thing, but if you can only receive knowledge 2 ways. Through the eyes, you can read it, or through the ears, and you can hear it. There is no other way. I mean, forgetting Braille. So in the old days it was purely through the ears, but that's not really good enough today. Today they want to see, because if a sort of, picture is worth 1,000 words, then a videotape is worth 1,000,000. So the idea now is to get in cameras into the bugging system. So the modern day of bugging is cameras. And in America, there is a company, I was tempted almost for a minute to put him on again. And that's the company, it's called Visual Methods Incorporated. And here, for instance, that are all pinhole lenses, special spying lenses. And they all clip together and fit together to make up different things. And you'll notice, for instance, that one of them is a sprinkler head. And we can look at that in a little bit more detail. There it is. As you can see, the camera's up above the ceiling, so all you see is a sprinkler head, and then that little mirror there. I had a fax from these people the other day saying they can now pan and zoom and tilt and everything with it. So, if we now take a look at some of their other things here, fitting it into, in America these are the radar detectors. So you fit them into radar detectors. Well, you can think of a similar British attempt or anywhere else. And in the antenna of a car, and I will in a minute come back to that antenna of a car because that was invented here, and in fact there's a funny story to that. Anyway, there you've got a zoom pinhole lens, inside mirrors, inside various other devices. Inside everyday items. These are meant for lifts. Put up in the corner of lifts. Now, that's a fibre optic device, and if you come back to the medical profession, they have things called fibroscopes and endoscopes, which they put down your body and look inside and everything else. Now, the bugging business and the intelligence business is nothing if it isn't inventive. And from this came a brilliant idea. Let's build a television camera inside the telescopic antenna of a car. So all we've got to do is get hold of a medical fibroscope and an antenna that we can put it up, 90-degree hole, and then we do the rest of it. Now, one of the tapes I want to show you now is about this very thing. It's actually my sort of tape I made to explain it to somebody else, but there is a joke attached to this. At the end of the thing, I say that this device is secret. It's what follows after that that will kill you. I think it may start off with something else that will interest you. Well, that's a bomb disposal device in which they're experimenting with stereoscopic vision. Because trying to pick something up when you're looking through a TV screen, you can't judge the distance. So the idea here was to, you can see he's going to try and pick it up out of the back of the... Can everybody see that over there? This is experimenting to build equipment for bomb disposal. Well, they did it fairly successfully. I'll speed that up so as we... Here's the picture taken through the telescopic antenna of a car. Hello, we're going high speed. Inside the telescopic antenna of a car. And attached to the book of the car. There is nobody in the car, it's completely empty. And it's easy to see inside that it is empty. It's a normal saloon car. And this is a normal antenna. In fact, it is concealing a camera and a lens, and a television camera and a television transmitter. And we have radio control pan so that we can swing around. We can also change these lenses to various different fields of view. The idea of this was that you could park a car somewhere where nobody would take any notice of the car. Because if you're going to sit somebody in the car, then everybody's attracted to the car. If you can have the car there with nobody sitting in it, then it hopefully gets ignored. And you sit up about 300 yards away that we use to take the photographs or the videotape that you have just seen. Although from the vehicle all that was visible was this section above my fingers, which is a knuckle, quite a conventional knuckle as used in any telescopic antenna, and an actual telescopic antenna. Conventionally, this looks no different to any others that you will see, but in fact, this particular antenna is very different. Well, here we can see a small hole. And just where my finger is a little 3mm hole, and that is a lens. And that lens has a view according to the type of antenna that you put in.
That goes on for a while, and we're running out of time, so I'll speed it
normal
up.
view or a telephoto.
You can see what it is. It's all the contra-rotating prisms underneath to keep the image upright.
To the camera.
I've got some other tapes I'd like to show you as well.
A very good upright image, exactly as you would expect to see it on any kind of camera or television set. Now this particular camera attached, and any camera, take infrared pictures and respond to infrared light.
Let's go on, doesn't it?
Normal photography. So the slight gain to a Ubicon, say this is a night vision device because it's not. Or lighting. But out in the country,
Did it get the game away then?
we expect you to look at this videotape.
Oh, I didn't go back far enough.
And we don't tell anybody about it other than people who would
It's secret,
expect you to
remember?
look at this videotape.
Well, for some reason or other, your machine doesn't like that tape. Anyway,
Well, I'll give you a proper clue. If we look at the
the joke is
camera,
that it immediately appeared on Tomorrow's
Now.
World.
Can you tell me where it is?
yes, in fact, it's
Totally
inside.
destroyed it.
It's coming out of that little tiny hole there.
I don't know why your machine doesn't
onto
like
an
it.
optic fibre inside, which goes down the mast, and then
So let's forget it from there. But anyway, all that trouble, all that thing, somebody put it on Tomorrow's World, and the story goes, it was in operation by drugs, customs people were doing a drugs observation, in which they were observing a house where a main dealer was operating. They were doing nothing about him, but they were filming all the people who visited the house, then identifying those persons and waiting 2 or 3 weeks and then taking them out on their own patch so that they didn't associate their arrest with the fact they visited that house. But somehow or other the knowledge got out, and the story goes that a drugs baron purchased one of these, which if you've got money, of course you can. I mean, if you've got money, you can purchase anything that's not available to anybody, but you can still buy it. And he gave it to Tomorrow's World in order to kill it. That's the story. Now, but it shows you what can be done with these, devices. This case here is
it's bits and pieces, and it's to illustrate the building blocks of a video briefcase for covert video recording and transmission. If you look inside here, this is a little camera with a pinhole lens. And that camera goes into there where it's held in correct register with one of the holes in this unit on the outside. Now, there is a mistake here. All of those holes should have been drilled so that they all look the same, because that one does look a little bit big at the moment. But there's a lot of trouble gone to disguise the hole in that camera, and it's actually not necessary. But before we go on to that, the building blocks are television transmitter, television amplifier, and your video recorder, miniature that you can get inside the case. Now, there is a trouble here. See, all of these things, you can go and buy the case, you can buy the camera, you can buy the lens, you can buy this, and when you come to put them all together, you find it doesn't work. Because Sony changed the goalposts. In the old days, doing audio, we would take an ordinary audio recorder, and it usually had a socket for remote control, so it was very easy, stop and start. If it didn't, you stopped and started it by interrupting the DC. No problem. Sony have changed all the goalposts, and this is microprocessor controlled, and it requires serial logic to tell the microprocessor what it is you're trying to do. So when you touch one of these buttons, you merely send a pulse. So there is no provision around here for mechanical remote control. And if you try and interrupt the DC, the microprocessor says, oh, you don't want me anymore. So it shuts off, shuts them all the way down, and shuts the whole thing out. So you can imagine the poor chap sitting there with this. It shuts out, and he just says to me, excuse me just 1 second, I want to open my case and switch it back on again. Well now, where does the TSU come in there? What about the TSU? This little trick here, this little board, is really what a TSU should do. It can buy all of these things. It can buy the transmitter. I mean, my company makes these. So you can buy them. Then you build this. And what this does is to take the mechanical button, which in this situation just fit underneath the leather here, so press on the back off. So a mechanical control, and this converts it into the logic that the microprocessor wants. So it then starts it, stops it, puts it in a record, takes it out of record. So that's where a TSU really comes in, and that's what the sort of job that you would, if you were to get a job with a TSU, this is what you should do, is solve these little problems, not invent the whole thing. Right? Now, a few years ago, I received an emergency call from an organisation in the States who were in Virginia. And they had been monitoring a group of former Rhodesian Selous scouts. And I don't know if you remember, they are the Rhodesian version of the SAS. But they had all joined up into an organisation in Johannesburg, and they were now involved in sort of crime. And one of the crimes that they thought would be a good one was to take over Zimbabwe, which was Rhodesia. And their plan, of course, was to go in there, take it over, and they were being financed by some very wealthy Indians. Now, the CIA, I mentioned their name, who were very interested in them, were only interested to know, should they give them some money and help them, or should they not? But they needed to know. And there was a meeting set up between one of the Indian representing the money and one of the chaps from the Selous Scouts in a pub in Putney. And I got the phone call saying, can you film it? Can you bug it? We want to know, you see. Well, it was a bit short notice, and I'm going back to one of these. I bought one of these, and I got, remember the type of video recorder that used to hang by your side? One of those, and I got a briefcase like that, and I cut a hole in it about that size to get the lens in. And I made the film. Now, I've got sound with it. I've also got a control signal in there which will puzzle you when you see it. But I will just tell you the history of this. Our people were also interested in this crew, and they actually got arrested. And this man you will hear on the tape, the South African one, was imprisoned here, and then he was suddenly, for some reason or other, he was given bail, but his passport was taken away. 3 days after he was given bail, he had a passport, he had a ticket, and he had everything, and he was back to Johannesburg. He arrived in Johannesburg on a Saturday night, and on Sunday morning he was on a mortuary slab. The reason being that he had betrayed the organisation. Now, what I'm going to show you is a little piece of the two of them talking. Now, this is real. This is a real one from a real situation, and this man died. On the wrong switch here or something, shouldn't it?
£33,000 at a time.
That's each mercenary.
Whether we should sit in the bank here doing that for 5 hours, I don't know whether that's a good idea. So possibly we should change, the arrangement here. Right? For that amount, I think we could meet anywhere. You could meet in here, and I could give you.
There's a lot of communication.
Oh yeah, yeah. The other thing that's going to make that even longer is if we have assholes getting through, of course.
I would direct them very direct to us.
No,
Not a problem.
is that better easier than going?
It's much easier than doing a local policy now.
Yeah.
We try it.
Yeah.
It works every time. The maximum delay is 40 minutes.
So when you say handling it this sunny? No.
No. To make the mind city and a guy also.
Yeah.
But Bruce has met them, I think is quite clean.
Well, it's this man here, this is back to you, who was assassinated.
Well, you see, that's also why, because I haven't met them. And as I say, when Bruce came to me with this, I said they were the ones who were insisting on getting in the car
One
and
thing,
going away.
if you saw the whole film, you'll see that sometimes the Indians actually look straight at briefcase at the camera, and he doesn't see this hole.
You better go through my contact. I can
Where's the briefcase?
Pardon?
Is it like, where is it placed?
I was sitting on the seat, you know, bench seat, little round tables, and it was sitting on the table about this far away, staring you straight in the face. And so quite often you look straight at him. And the reason for that
Lying
is,
down flat.
no, it was standing upright. That's the point. That's it. The whole secret is, you see, your eye sees what it thinks it should see. Your eye thinks it should see a briefcase, so it sees a briefcase. And that's what I said to you earlier on, that this kind of thing is probably not necessary. Where you go to the amount of concealing the lens. Anything that attracts your eye, to make your eye see what you think you ought to see. But the thinking behind this is exactly the same, because into this goes a business card or a luggage tag. So when you see a name and address in there, you think that's a luggage tag. So the message to your brain is, it's a luggage tag. There's no message saying it's a camera.
Where was the microphone?
Ah, now that's a very good question. When I went down to this pub, I had about 3 hours prior before the meeting, and there was all cubicles along the other side. So I knew they would go into the cubicles, so I bugged everyone. And that's the control signal. You heard, did you hear the little high pitch in the background? I'd given each one, it's a transmitter in each cubicle, and I'd given each one a slightly different frequency, so that I could identify which one to tune to on the... Because don't forget, I couldn't sit there and open it and say, excuse me just a minute, I'll put the headphones on and make sure which one. So, you know, I had to have another thing. So I had some frequencies which lit LED, so I knew which one to do it. It did... There's a very funny sequel to that story, by the way. When I sent that tape back, they decided that it was of no interest, and they gave it to some British counterparts. And the British counterparts, unfortunately, it's been removed. But when you're in a situation like that, it goes on for hours, and it's boring. Very boring. But I did notice that in the pub, there were some of our people also watching them. So for fun, I filmed them as well. And that got me in a lot of trouble. Because Langley loaned it, our people saw it, and immediately got in touch with Langley, having seen their own people, and said, you know, what sort of nasty, horrible little thing that crept out from under a stone took that? And Langley thought, oh, do him a favour. Well, you know, tell him he did it, you know, give him more work. So they said, I did it. So I said, oh, did he? Yeah, and I'm afraid that happened. I got done for it. But now, we've come up to... Should I go through any questions at the moment? Unless I'll demonstrate that for you, if you like. But anybody got any questions? No questions?
Well, on the audio, from coming back to the microphone, the thing that was very distinctive was how clear and discriminatory the audio was.
Yes.
But in a pub, I mean, it's often quite difficult to hold a conversation. There's so much noise going on. How
Correct.
do you eliminate all the ambient noise?
Right. This is a subject all on its own. Right. Now, the other thing that really puzzles me about the amateur world, or the sort of semi-commercial world doing bugging in audio, is that they don't understand what a microphone is and how it works. And most rooms that you go into, this one is probably the same. You get what I call room boom in there. And a conversation often sounds something like, when you hear the tape, and You can't understand it. Well now, you know that for all police interview room work now, they use a microphone, I've forgotten the name of it. It's a flat plate in which the mic element is just a fraction of an inch above the plate. And it cancels all the reflections. Right? Don't forget, what causes that is you get a signal coming straight to the mic, right? Then it hits the wall and bounces back a fraction later. Right? Now, if you've got absorption walls, there's no bounce back, so you get a nice clean one signal. But when you've got a room boom, they're all coming back. So by making the mic tight to a flat metal plate, you eliminate that and you get that clear sound. And if you can put 2 in, that's even better. And if you can put 3 in, that's even better. And if you can put adaptive filtering after that, that's even better still.
Yes, well that deals with the problem where you've got a single source of sound in a highly reverberant room. But what happens, say, in a pub where you have multiple sources of sound?
Just cut your filtering. All I do is I just cut it as tight to 3 kilohertz as I can.
And that's what you did in that instance. Yes, it's very effective.
It is, but it's just a really... I think that what often happens is that people go and buy a microphone and buy an amplifier that is for hi-fi. So of course it's pulling in everything that's available.
But are they uni or omnidirectional?
Practically all are omnidirectional, because you don't really know where the people are going to be or what's going to happen. You know. But it is a science. It is, and there is a paper. In fact, in that article, I produced a paper by the Czechoslovakian Secret Service on the how to burglars with microphones, and it talks a lot about that problem. But no, it is something that really isn't understood. You'd think that the people who are doing this kind of thing today would learn to put at least 2 mics in. Because if you listen to a room with 1 mic and then a room with 2 mics, the difference is astronomical, absolutely astronomical. And really you should bug a room with 4 mics. And if you can use an adaptive filter, and you've got something like, for instance, that sound there, we could carry on, and our ears can shut that sound out, and our brain can shut it out, and we can hear the sound we want to hear. But the microphone can't. It hears everything. But if you use an adaptive filtering technique, or even some simple techniques, if you can put, and there's situations where we've got into buildings where there's heavy air conditioning at one end, you put a mic onto the air conditioning unit so that it only picks up that sound, even a contact mic, and then the other mic picks up that sound and the audio, and then you use an adaptive filter to use that as your software to subtract that from the other one, leaving just the audio. And there was some years ago, Her Majesty's government very kindly used to loan large limousines to visiting dignitaries. And they provided them with one with a glass set, and they provided them with a lovely radio set in the thing, so they could turn it up so nobody could hear what they were talking. But of course in the boot was all the processing equipment that took out, because there was, the one side of the filter was hardwired into the radio, and of course the other one was to the microphones, and it was clear speech again. So, no, but it is a science that I think our people, as I said before, are the best in the world. They're certainly better than the States, and certainly better than the Russians. Have learned this science well, but you know, I always say that I think I've been up every blind alley there is to go up. I think I've made every mistake there is that you can make, and you learn by that. I don't think you learn by knowledge, because I can remember when I was a student, my professor used to say to me that nothing existed above 600 megs. And if it did, it would only go in a straight line. But when I first started playing with 1.3 and 1.2 gigs, I couldn't get it in a straight line. It used to go where man had never trod before. And we could actually prove that with this. In fact, if you remember, if you go to Whitehall, you see the old building that Churchill used to live in, working, built like, you know, a fort. Well, you've got corridors in there and walls 5-6 feet thick, and metal doors that clang. Now, if you're going to put a television system in, monitoring system, to try and drill through that lot, and you've got to get round these metal doors. So we experimented and came up with 1.2 gigs, and that would go through the keyholes, go under doors, it'd go where man had never tried before. And here, with this little one thing there, let's see if we can get this going again. It might just interest you. If it will. Do we press something here to get to
Internal and external switch on there.
Can somebody in the front get it? It's on. Yeah, there it is. So if I wandered around with this, I could go wandering off into other parts of the building, and you know, no trouble at all. Simple and omnidirectional. Now, what's happening often, of course, I don't know if you've watched these car racing when they've got them on the cars. And they're transmitting from the cars, you sometimes lose the picture, and it sometimes freezes. Right? What's happening there is they get the problem, which is orientation. It's either it's vertically polarized or horizontally polarized, and of course, when it does a bounce, it can change its polarization, and you lose the picture for a second. In BBC and ITV, what they've got is freeze frame and video grabbers, frame grabbers, and so it just automatically grabs and holds the frame during that little thing and then goes on. Now you can't do it, well, I don't know how to do it. I've used the right-hand circular antennas trying to solve this problem, and in fact it's interesting on that, because coming back to this system here, in the early days of that, transmitting from a briefcase, we used to transmit to a monitoring system, which could be a car, a van, and the video recorder was in the van. And that got thrown out in the court. Because when it was displayed in court, you would get these cuts and these jumps, and the defence counsel would stand up and say, been interfered with. And it got thrown out. So you need now two types of evidence. You need one, the instant transmission being received, so that if the man out front is in trouble, you can send the guerrillas in to save him. And the second one, you need hardwired historical evidence which can be produced in court. So the case needs to do two jobs. But I don't know if anybody wants to go walkish with this, so please do so. Any other questions?
Yes, but telephone tapping, or actually sort of putting radio transmitters onto telephone lines, is that easily detected?
I will guarantee to bug a telephone line and put up any money you like, and you can't find it. I guarantee that. It's the wrong kind of thing here. Anyway, that's the circuit of a telephone buck, right? Everybody have a look at it. If you want to look at it, I'll explain it to you. It's what is called a pole job. Now, it has its own battery, and it is parallel connected. Right? And it operates when it transmits from its own internal battery, And then when it's not transmitting, it recharges the battery from somebody else's telephone line. It can do it, of course, from your own, but the best way is to do it. So you connect it parallel outside on the post, right? And every time that you make a call, it transmits. And don't forget, it's nice and high up the telegraph pole, so it's got a good chance to transmit a good distance, easy to put the antenna, probably get a mile out of it, where you have a relay, relaying it on. And then, when it comes off, when you stop, it switches off. If you've done it for somebody else's line, then it takes about 1 or 2 milliamps, no more, from another line, and gradually, slowly recharges the battery, and is there for life. Now, the thing to ask you is this. If I make a parallel tap, self-powered, to a telephone line, how would you detect it?
Well, it depends on how you're actually extracting the audio from the telephone line.
Yes.
I mean, if you're, I suppose you capacitively coupled.
Yes.
Well, I suppose you don't look for the imbalance between the two lines.
But the imbalance is already there out of proportion to anything that introduces.
I don't know.
Your parameters of your telephone line are so bad that there's, you know, and the difference here is so microscopic that you'll never make it. You'll just never be able to detect it.
So the only way they'd be able to detect it would if you'd be drawing a substantial amount of current.
And none of them do. None of them do. It's unreadable. Now, in the departments where this is critical, you know, that you really must look after the telephone line, we use a time domain reflectometer. Okay? But think about the work here. First of all, you've got to disconnect that building from the exchange. Now you've got to fire your time domain reflectometer with a crew, probably of 10 or 12, for about 3 or 4 days, and map the circuit in the building. Every foot of it. And then, because the time domain will give you distance, you can say at 1,600 feet, there's a thing, we know that that is a junction box in Bill Blogg's office. It's recorded, okay? Having done that, you will fire a signature. And I've got a blackboard. You fire a signature. Now, you get virtually, shall we say, a straight line, and then a gentle curved dip there, which will tell you, and you can get the distance of that. When I did that on one occasion and found that dip, I finally solved it's where the cat used to go and urinate. And that was what was causing that dip. And she went to the same place every time. But you get these. Now, every single day, you've got to go back, if you're worried on a daily basis, disconnect the exchange, and by some strange reason, people get annoyed with it. They get upset. And for about 4 hours, they're out of communication while you check that it's done.
But who's interested in this sort of thing?
We're interested in what?
In that sort of line?
Certain departments in the MOD and that, who are petrified about... I mean...
I don't understand it. I'm a green phone and a red phone man, all right? You don't say more.
Yes. Well, there are people who are that paranoia.
Well, they should be more careful. They should know what they're doing, shouldn't they?
Yes, but the point is that they're wasting their time because it becomes an impossibility. You can't do it. You physically can't do it. Now, the other thing, of course, you'll find is that the easiest thing, as you will then know, to tap is a single line private telephone. If you've got a big exchange with multi-lines where they can be allocated as need arises, you never know which of the outside lines are going to be picked up by the target. Right? Devices have been created whereby the target phone is given an ident device, and then all the lines are scanned outside for the ident to come up, and then you latch onto it. but again, you're talking about some sophistication. But on that basis, you can't actually really tell whether a phone is tapped or not, other than to trust the people inside and prevent unauthorised getting in. Because I don't think that I'm quite convinced that if I've given a few hours access into any building, I will tap the phone and you will never discover it other than by physical means. So everything you do to detect it, I think, is a waste of effort and a waste of time.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, but I mean, that's the whole point.
That's my point as well,
Yeah.
yes. What I'm saying is that money is spent on this, which is stupid and totally unnecessary.
It's all a matter of training of what people should say over the TV.
Precisely. And of course, you come back to the person who's most important. What does he want? He wants his private phone. You go into commerce, you go into the commercial companies as well. Managing director insists, or the man insists that he must have his own private phone. Of course, he's made it life simple. And if you, because you bug the one that you can get at now, and if you come back to, I'll quickly finish, you may have heard stories about the reading the computer screens. All right? Now, this doesn't actually work in practice, because if you go to a large industrial estate, there are so many screens going all day long that the confusion of them means you can't really sort it out. But if you wait until night, then probably the most important man in the building will stay late and he'll work on his alone and you've got it.
Very good.
I'm sure Mr. Tracey will be available for any other questions you may have. But in the meantime, can we thank him in the traditional way, please? Before we do disappear, a couple of things. If you haven't signed the attendance list, since we've got such a good attendance here, if you could do so, it looks good on my books if nothing else. And secondly, the next lecture in this series will be on the 7th of April, here, again at 6 o'clock, and it'll be on free space optics for information processing and storage. So that's everything from CD players up until these fancy things that will be computer-generated holograms and so on. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. I've already got one of that is a company looked at practically all the
I don't know. I could try and hold it.
Yes. No, it faces straight up. You can buy them from the taxi.
Yeah, I've seen it, but I was trying to make the notice. Someone told me what you do.
Only ours never does.
There must be many traffic packages. Well, there's a lot of